I was building, not only with a clear value proposition for the clients, but also with a clear value proposition for the VC and the potential acquirer in the future. So my track record is almost the same for the three companies. I always started and sold them within 5 years.
Welcome to Entrepreneurism. I'm your host, Scott Pollack, a seasoned business leader, entrepreneur, and CEO coach with a passion for helping others achieve success in their entrepreneurial journeys. On this show, we dive deep into the world of entrepreneurship, uncovering why so many struggle and revealing what the most successful do differently. True entrepreneurs have unique superpowers, including the ability to spot hidden business opportunities and convert them into thriving ventures. For most mere mortals, this ability is absolutely unfathomable. But these same strengths can become sources of struggle, whether it's pursuing multiple opportunities without losing focus, scaling without eroding culture, or balancing short-term demands with long-term vision. The entrepreneur's journey is full of tensions. Here we explore critical factors that drive entrepreneurial success. How to stay focused, manage resources, build strong teams, and develop the resilience to navigate the ups and downs of the journey. Bold ideas, candid conversations, and insights that will help you unlock your full potential. Ready to learn and grow, expand your toolkit, and discover actionable strategies to help you navigate your own entrepreneurism? Let's dive in. With me today is my good friend, Gabrielle Chou, a true serial entrepreneur with 3 successful exits under her belt. Welcome, Gabrielle.
Hey, good afternoon, Scott. It's a pleasure to be with you.
It's great to have you. So we've known each other for about 10 years now. And have been in a couple entrepreneur forums together over those years. So I feel like I've witnessed the incredible intensity as an entrepreneur that you bring, in particular, obviously, in your third tech startup, Allure Systems. And I've watched you transition from being the CEO there of this AI-driven company, which you sold to Farfetch, and I think it was 2022.
Correct.
And to becoming a professor at NYU Shanghai, teaching students how generative AI applies to disruptive business models and entrepreneurship, which is a pretty hot topic in its own right, and I'm sure we could do a whole episode just on that. But for today, I'd like to focus a little bit more on your entrepreneur journey and what you learned from that, given that that's really the core of the show. So perhaps you can talk briefly about how you started your entrepreneurial journey.
Sure. Well, nothing was really in the stars for me to become an entrepreneur. I became an entrepreneur because I resigned from my job very abruptly, not getting along with my boss. I was in consulting, and I realized that I was a young mother with 2 kids, and I needed to make money to make a living. So with my husband, we decided that I would become an entrepreneur. And at the beginning, I thought, okay, I just need to make $5,000 a month. That was my target. And I had an idea, started to collect consumers' data and help company use this data to target their messages more precisely to the consumers. And I did first proof of concept, really standing in a in a hallway of a big office building and distributing questionnaire and getting the feedback in exchange for some samples of product. And that was thanks to L'Oreal, who was my first POC, proof of concept
Cool.
customer. And they loved what we collected, and I started to think, okay, let's do a little bit more. And at that time, I was really not thinking about raising money or anything. But my brother, who was living in the US, told me, well, you should definitely go and raise money. There's a potential in your idea. And I went to the US knowing absolutely nothing about how to talk to VC. Managed nevertheless to raise a couple of millions of dollars, and that was the beginning of my first adventure. And to accelerate a little bit, a few years later, I sold this business that was, in tens of millions of revenue, to a large Nasdaq-listed American company. And I did it again a second time and a third time, and you just mentioned earlier. So that's how I started.
You know, on the one hand, I would say not unusual that you were sort of the accidental entrepreneur, that you had to do something, and then you say, okay, let's just try something. But at the same time, I think that's also what entrepreneurship is about. You said, here's something that looks interesting. It could be an opportunity, and you had the gumption to go for it. I love that. I mean, and learn on the way.
Yeah. I think also necessity
Mm,
makes the man. So let me explain that. It's I was really driven by I need to make money and I need to 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 make this successful. So if the data would not have worked, I would have tried something else.
mm,
And I think sometimes there's a lot of entrepreneur that wants to pursue their idea.
mm,
I was pursuing like, how do I make money?
mm,
You know, the my clients could have asked me to do something else with the data, to become, I don't know, a market research company or something else. I would have done it. But fortunately, they liked the vision, and we started with that. And by the way, a big thanks to L'Oreal, who has across those years became my number one client. Managed to serve them for all their brands, and that was the first of all the cosmetic clients that I got. I think we got almost all of them, all the international ones at least. So, once you start to execute well, then you get other clients that come along.
Absolutely. Anchor clients are golden. And L'Oreal, it's a pretty good anchor client. Uh, what would certainly you've already mentioned your persistence. Any other sort of superpowers that you would say, entrepreneurial superpowers, that really drove you forward or propelled you towards success in those early days or later on?
I think everyone that is an entrepreneur and had some kind of success will tell you that they are good at seeing the hidden value in businesses before the market catches up. So that's definitely one thing that I have in common with many, many entrepreneurs. But I think this is true for almost all of us. Um, I think where I may be a bit different from other entrepreneur, and I thought about your question before, to be honest,
Yeah.
um, is probably at getting companies that I was building not only with a clear value proposition for the clients, but also with a clear value proposition for the VC and the potential acquirer in the future. So my track record is almost the same for the three companies. I always started and sold them within 5 years. And so, um, one would say I'm not really interested in growing them bigger. It's probably true. I but the fact that I sold them is probably a superpower that not everyone has in the entrepreneurship is how to strategically position your company as you are building it so that it's not only good for your clients, which are your revenue,
Hmm.
but also for your investor and your future acquirer. And sometimes we have a view of who are the future acquirer, and they ended up being very different. So, you know,
Hmm.
I was just mentioning you that almost everyone has this ability to anticipate trends, right? When you are an entrepreneur, but the ability to see the trends also for the future acquirer, I think that's what probably differentiates me from others.
I really like that, and I want to drill
Very
in.
presumptuous of me to say, I
Yeah,
must say.
no, no,
I
but
feel ashamed to say that.
you shouldn't. But I really want to drill into it because I mean, first of all, even um, to reflect back. So the superpower of being able to see opportunities. I agree that the entrepreneur has to be able to see opportunities. Of course, lots of entrepreneurs don't necessarily succeed just because they can see those trends or they can see those opportunities. And one of the things that I've seen many times is because they get distracted, they see too many opportunities, or they keep seeing new opportunities, and they can't focus. But what you're talking about is different, and in the sense that I see it as managing one of these inherent tensions. So if you're going to go out and raise money, certainly there's an inherent tension throughout the journey, or at different points of the journey, um, between the demands of different stakeholders. What it is your customers want from you, what it is your investors want from you, what it is a potential acquirer might want from you, and to be able to balance, because it's not so much that you can find an optimal, I don't think, although I'm curious from you, how you think about that. But I see it as a balance of these this tension, getting pulled in different directions and finding the right balance to be able, as you said, to build and exit a business within 5 years, which to do that a few times, that really is a feat. There's not too many entrepreneurs that I know that have been able to replicate that with that kind of rhythm.
So I think the tension that you are describing should not exist. Uh,
Shouldn't or doesn't. Shouldn't, I
uh,
wish, right? But unpack
should
that.
not exist. Let me explain why I say that. Because I think I take the first example of the first business that I built, which was around data. So the idea was to collect data and to use algorithm and AI, to, but AI was very new at the time, to start understanding the trends of the consumers, right?
Mhm.
So this idea was relatively simple. Uh, this idea had legs for everyone, had legs for the clients, had legs for the investors, and had legs for the future acquirer. Of course, along the way, we built also a SaaS platform, we built other things, but data was at its core, and it had legs for everyone. And we I think the very early on, the investor asked, "Oh, why don't you do like a business of reviewing, of enabling the customer review that will collect data and at the same time will help a lot." But we decided against, and you will notice that I use we, um, because uh, because we thought, hmm, yeah, if we start to do that, we will collect data, but this will not be our primary function, and therefore we will get distracted. So to now I say you should, when you are an entrepreneur, not have the tension between the three. But the reality is that your business, particularly if you build it, year one, and you're starting to think about selling it year five, or, year 10, 20, your business has been built with one value proposition. And maybe at the time, the three were very aligned: value proposition for your clients, value proposition for your investor, and for the future acquirer. But in 5, 10, 20 years, many things happen. And how to realign this is definitely a job on its own, to be able to get you to a proper and good multiple exit. So I think at the beginning, when you start your business, you should should not have any tension between the three.
Mm.
But it's true that along the line, things will happen, and you need to reconcile and to work. And this is a different exercise than value proposition for your customer. So this is things that you need to think about
Mm.
regularly, and
Can,
as you build a business.
can you give one example of a decision that you made in the course of one of those three ventures where you were taking into account the intersection of these interests, navigating, so to speak, and you believe that paid off in being able to
Yeah.
successfully grow and still exit the business.
So in the last business, which was using computer vision and AI to generate images for the e-commerce fashion industry, we were literally taking a clothes, an apparel that was sold online, and putting it on a model that looked more like the customer we wanted to see. So if you are Hispanic, maybe you want to see an Hispanic model to wear the clothes. And if you are a size 4 customer, you will want to see a size 4 model, etc.
And
So,
these were AI created models. These were not people that actually existed.
yeah, that was a mix. So I can tell you an anecdote, but let me first answer
Okay,
your
first answer
question,
the
and I'll
question.
tell you the anecdote later. So we could have pursued a route of um, just building those images at scale, because honestly, once you can create one, you can create hundreds. It costs you approximately the same. And we could have built another business of affiliation, of getting revenue out of the image click, etc. But we thought, okay, we have only a good chance of exit if our technology is superior. So instead of going towards the affiliation that could have potentially brought us more revenue, we went for the technology, and we served only very demanding clients, because that's where you learn the most. So this is definitely something that was a choice,
Mm.
to remain value proposition for the exit on the technology. And in fact, when we were approached by different company for acquisition, um, because that's the way it should happen, you're being approached as opposed to you getting trying to sell your business. Those company were looking at our technology.
Mm.
Our clients lists were less of interest to them. So,
Okay.
but this, you have to really understand where are going to be the acquirer.
Mm. Mm. So you had made the assumption perhaps that they were going to already have much bigger and better client lists, so that they weren't going to spend a lot on yours, but you would have something that they don't have, which is the technology.
In the first business, we were data plus client lists. Um, and we thought our technology might be of interest, but data plus client list.
Mm.
In the last business, we thought the client list will just give us the stamp of approval, but
Credibility.
the revenue we were getting from those clients was not humongous enough, and we couldn't see a way to make it humongous.
Mm. Mm. Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Good examples. Good examples. Um, what would you say has been your greatest personal struggle as an entrepreneur?
Well, I have so many. Uh,
Pick
um, so as an entrepreneur, you constantly want to motivate your team, but at the same time, you are worried about numbers of things, so you cannot let it show. But at the same time, if you want to have the a real rapport with your team, you need to give some information, maybe reframing it, so that the context is perceived, but the anxiety does not build in. Um, so that was definitely a struggle. Struggle to raise money. Uh, it's you know the beginning was easy because everyone wanted to invest, um, but it's not always that easy, especially when you present a business that is very disruptive. So the first business was somehow existing elsewhere, and I just brought it here. But in in the last business, the one of virtual models for the fashion industry, this was really new. I mean, we're
Sure.
talking about 2017,
Hmm.
2019 when I started to launch it and get the first customer, and where got into Y Combinator. But this was, I remember before Y Combinator, I went to see on the West Coast, I don't know, probably 20 investors, and we had revenue. We had like a couple of millions of revenue at the time, um, but that was not enough to convince them.
So,
The moment we got
what
into Y
what
Combinator,
what do
then
you think?
everybody came.
Yeah, well, okay. So getting into a named accelerator, that certainly helped. I was going to ask you what helped you conquer that hurdle, that challenge. But I actually, if the answer is that Y Combinator, taking you on gave you the credibility, then I would.
Scott, I'm going to be honest. The reality is that I realized after getting the stamp of approval of Y Combinator
Hmm.
that the reason I didn't manage to raise money was because I was French on the West Coast, not knowing a lot of people.
Mm,
We had revenue, we had technology that was working, but that's not enough.
yeah,
And Y Combinator gave us the stamp of approval. So suddenly we were kosher for investment.
yeah. You went from being an outsider in Silicon Valley to more of an insider. Yeah, makes sense. Go back to the first one you mentioned, you in leading your team, because it sounded like it was more of a leadership struggle and trying to find the right balance. I think entrepreneurs all have uh, anxiety. It's a question of what you do with the anxiety, right? I mean, but I love Jim Collins. He uses the phrase productive paranoia for successful entrepreneurs that, of course, they're afraid of all kinds of things potentially happening, but they don't let it paralyze them. But talk about, what you in particular were struggling with, how to find that balance with your team and again, how did you think about getting over that? And, since you obviously, have had several times to practice, what do you think made that work?
I think it's super important to be genuine, and I pride myself for having a lots of the team members that stayed super long with me from the very beginning to the very end and continue to work with the business after acquisition, although I left
Hmm.
after. Um, so I think being genuine and being interested in the team and their struggles helped a lot. Um, but it's, you don't want to worry them. So I was telling you in the first business, I raised a couple of millions. I made all the mistakes possible and burn it within the first year. Literally, I burned 2 million in the first year
Hmm.
because I wasn't. I never learned entrepreneurship. I mean, I just became an entrepreneur. So I listened too much to my investors. The investors were like, hire, get the best talents, take Corn Ferry for recruitment so that you accelerate, you find the best, and etc. I mean, those were stupid advice, honestly. VC have never run a business. I mean, for most of them, except Y Combinator. So they tell you things that don't make always a lot of sense. So we arrived at after a year with literally no cash, and
Hmm.
a huge. We had a huge ramp up from a couple of people to being 60 people on the payroll. That cost a lot of money, and we
So
organized marketing events, etc. And
what'd you do? I mean, you're not the first entrepreneur to burn through your runway, right? Um,
yeah, but I mean, so to answer to your question, whether I told the team that we had a problem with money, yes, I did. I did, and I explained exactly what happened and the mistakes I've done and how we will run for the future. And I was very genuine in telling them I've been stupid, and I apologize very deeply and for bringing you onto this boat, which I thought will sail easily, but it's much harder than I thought. And some of them left, and some of them stayed, and that helped fostering a good sense of communication. You say the truth, and you appreciate each team for what they bring. Not getting into the politics of teams.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. And by the way, I mean, I see that beyond being genuine, which it certainly was, you were willing to be vulnerable, and that's I think a common thread with some of the best leaders that I get to see, is that they realize that projecting invincibility doesn't get people inspired the same way that showing people that you're human too, and make mistakes, and therefore they're willing to also communicate when they make a mistake, and you can address those mistakes much quicker, as opposed to, if they see you as invulnerable, then they want to try and project the same, and of course everything's getting buried under the rug, which is not a great way to build a successful business. So yeah, that's a great example. Um, I was going to ask, how did you end up turning that one around? So after you built through, you lost some of your best people, but you kept some of them, right?
yeah, so we went from 60 to 11, and so the payroll was much smaller.
Mhm.
I cut my salary. My co-founder also cut his salary, and we survived. And
Yep.
I think going back to square one, where we needed to make money in order to survive, help
Yep.
us steer us in the right direction where the demand was.
That's exactly.
And from that on, we got more successful, and eventually we're the leading player in the country.
It's an awesome story, and then it's again, I think there are several stories of entrepreneurs that burned through their own way. In some cases, the companies blew up, and that was the end of them. And in your case, that's great that you were able to right size and to get back to basics, make money, and that always helps. Revenue is certainly important, or cash. I mean, forgetting revenue, which can be vanity. It's cash that's king, right? So, looking at your journey, you took some time between your second and your third venture, I believe. And I expect that gave you, again, some time to reflect before you started that third venture. And I wanted to ask, what did you perhaps deliberately do differently in your third startup, and why? How did you distill any of the learnings from your first couple?
Um, okay, first, my second venture was a B2C venture. So the first one was B2B, the
Yep.
second one was B2C. So I definitely learned that I was not made for B2C. And second, I learned that I strive better in technology environment, data technology, but not on things that are um, bit more driven by marketing to the consumer, if it makes sense.
Hmm.
Um, so for the third venture, the idea came around because of the second venture. So in the second venture, we were selling fashion that was uh, made upon order. Um, when we received the order, we were manufacturing and sending to the customer within 7 days, whatever was the location. So a bit similar to what Shein is capable of doing now, but they executed much better than we did. Um, and they so in this business, I learned what was my forte, but I also started to get requests from businesses in the fashion industry to say, well, it's very cute what you're doing, and producing fashion at scale with minimum order being one. um, Very cute, but could you turn around your technology of showing the design of your product on a model to become showing an existing product on a virtual model? So I started to think about that, made sure that there was enough demand, and we started to. So the reason it took a bit of time was, one, also because a tragedy happened in my family. One of my siblings passed away, and that was very brutal, and I wanted to be there for my family. But also because I um, I wanted to make sure that a very disruptive value proposition really was going to hit uh, the customer, well, the businesses. It's very difficult to propose a disrupting
Mm,
value proposition. So that's why it took some time. And building it, the technology behind it was hard too.
okay. Okay.
So I could go on for fake it until you make it. Um, but there's a lot of things that happened during that time.
Right. 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 And I'm aware of, yeah, some of the personal challenges, which of course, had you taking a break and the right thing for you to do at the time. Okay. Time for some quick fire. Switch it up a little bit. Some entrepreneur hacks. So what's one book every entrepreneur should read?
Lean Startup
Mm.
by what's his name? Uh,
Uh,
Eric Ries.
Eric Ries. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
So that's a good one. But I think what I advise a lot of young entrepreneurs to read is, and I think even the older one and more accomplished one should always go back to, is Value Proposition by Fringer, the Value Proposition Canvas.
Yeah.
This is, we talk about product market fit.
Yep.
Everything is in Value Proposition book. It's a
Yep.
handbook for entrepreneur in reality, although it's not
Yep.
sold this way.
Yeah. Agreed. What's one thing you do every morning to set yourself up for success?
Coffee?
And coffee
No,
never hurts.
I guess, having time with the family also is important. I definitely travel too much for my family. I was working every night, but we made a rule with my husband that we will be there for the dinner with our kids
Okay.
every night
Okay.
when
So
we were not traveling.
that's the ritual. Yeah. What's one tool or app you can't live without?
Uh, OpenAI, ChatGPT,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
Not
You're asking
surprised.
someone that works in AI, so
Yep. Yep. What daily habit keeps you grounded?
breathing exercise.
Mm,
I strongly recommend to anyone that gets into a mood that doesn't know how to shake it up to consider breathing exercise. It's
mm,
really good. You can do it quietly. Nobody knows.
yep.
It lasts a minute or two or 20, whatever you want it. But it helps a lot getting back to the reality, grounding you.
Yeah. That's a good one. And final quick fire. What's the best piece of business advice you've ever received?
Hmm. Generate revenue.
Mm,
It's like, I know it sounds dumb, but I think now with this culture of entrepreneurship, everyone is thinking a little bit too much before making sure that the customer are in and wants the product or the
mm,
service.
yeah. Yep. Gotta make money. Gotta make money.
If you have money, money is uh, a KPI for your success. It means that the customer believes in what you're saying. Of course, if you start to make money on 10 different things, that's not what I'm talking about. I say make money consistently with the same product or solution. Then you have product market fit. And then after it's only execution.
There you go. I think that's a great note to wrap up on. Gabrielle, I really appreciate you joining the show today. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, Scott. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
There's so much more. I feel like we could talk for hours, and I know we sometimes do anyway. So perhaps I can get you back again, and we can talk more about generative AI and its impact on entrepreneurship. But for today, let's wrap up. To my listeners, we've got many more amazing guests lined up. So please subscribe, leave feedback, and share this episode with your feeds. And until next time,
Thank you,
bye.
Scott. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening. Remember, entrepreneurship isn't just about spotting opportunities. It's about taking disciplined action to bring them to life. Hope you'll join again next time as we continue to unpack the complexities of entrepreneurism.